welcome to Lead Live, reminding you of your personal genius and how you think in order to actualize what you desire.
Well, good day, everyone. It's an honor to see you, to understand that we're in a place where, if we choose, we're experiencing our greatness. Lead Live, LEAD stands for Leadership Excellence and Achievement on Demand. It's all about reminding us that we come from greatness, we're part of greatness, we get to go back to greatness. I mean that in a literal sense, humbly speaking. And so today is consistent with that understanding. And we are very honored to have someone who's living aspects of her greatness. And she's going to share some of the things that she's done that have been invaluable, not only to her own growth and development, yet intentionally to facilitate that of others, as well as organizations' growth and development. What is our topic? Why is leading in education important to me? This is the question that she will be asking. And it's within the context of the opportunity in growth, development, and impact. And so before I bring her on board, what comes to mind is the whole power of the unit that she is responsible to serve. As a servant leader, she understands the power of engineering leadership. There's a reason why I'm saying that, folks. Think about it. Engineering leadership. She understands that it not only will benefit the individual who's on the receiving end of it, in fact, who's part of developing or manifesting the effectiveness of the whole notion of engineering leadership. It also benefits the organizations that individuals serve, whether it's their own organization or the organization they're serving in support of the greater community, because they're working for someone else, in part, or whether it's for the greater society. Engineering leadership is always intentional, or ought to be. So, who do we have today who's really about the business of helping people satisfy not only their own basic needs to be effective, to function in a way where they're adding value to society, to life itself? This remarkable woman, her name is Stephany Prince. She's the executive director of the Coleman Fung Institute for Engineering Leadership at the University of California at Berkeley. And I am honored that we have her here today. Let me just share a little bit about her. She's dedicated her life to service, investing in the dreams of others to maximize their greatest potential. As such, she's got a passion, and she is driven by that passion. That she's informed and guided by some overarching principles that she'll share with us. 2 decades of experience in higher education leadership. She joined UC Berkeley after serving at Stanford University in a number of roles, including as Director of Finance and Administration for the School of Medicine Biomedical Ethics Unit. And she set the strategic vision. She developed mission-aligned partnerships. And she also had other experiences in terms of enrollment, student services, remote pedagogy, diversity, inclusion, equity. We're going to come back to that DEI set of understandings that we've developed in this society and beyond in a moment. She's also managed large budget, multi-million-dollar budgets, and led high-performance teams. So she's leveraging all that and much more, her own personal power, as she not only leads, but she manages the unit that she's responsible for. Stephany is a native of California, and I'm very honored, and I feel a special privilege to say that I am in the same sorority that she's in, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. It's the largest sorority, first sorority created for Black women, inclusive of women, across the board, was created in 1908, and this woman leads with distinction in the way that the sorority really inspired us all to do. So without further ado, I want to ask this remarkable woman to come into the studio with your help, Jet. Hello there.
Hello, Sora Elnora. How are you?
I am well. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much.
And
It's
you're
an
having
honor
a
to
great
be
day
here.
so far?
Yes, the day is going well. It's absolutely beautiful outside here in California. So I'm taking it all in as I'm continuing to work from home.
Yeah. Yeah, we're humbled by COVID-19
Yes.
pandemic. And even though things seems to be loosening up, they also seem to be contracting again.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for leading wherever you're at, and definitely in California. So my first question I like to ask our guests, especially if they're new to this broadcast, is would you share something with us that folks would not otherwise know about you? They can't find it in social media, and yet it really illuminates the essence of who you are, or something rather special about you.
Sure. One of the things that really led me to education is not the traditional route. When I was in college, my desire was to be a lawyer. I had my heart set on law. And so, one of the things that happened, I was working for Santa Clara County Probation Department, and this was in 2000. And I got the unfortunate phone call during this time that my older brother, who at the time was 23 years old, was shot 12 times by the police.
Wow.
And so imagine being in law enforcement and surrounded by all of these different types of police officers and attorneys and different things like that. You spend 18, 20 years of your life focused in one direction. And it's amazing how one call can cause you to pivot in a direction you never considered. And so after receiving that call and losing my brother in such a traumatic way, it changed my trajectory from focusing in on law. And so I got a call from a friend one day who was working at San Jose State University. And she says to me, I know you're struggling as to what you want to do. Working in law enforcement is not really it seems that you want to do now with what has happened to your brother. And I was experiencing all of this anxiety. And I said, maybe I will go and try working in higher education. So she had this position open for an operations analyst at San Jose State. And I went there and I enjoyed every moment of it. But there was a unique situation, Elnora, that happened at San Jose State that caused me to go into educational leadership or leadership
What's
in
that?
education. So there was a meeting that was happening. And during this time, it was a large organization, about 200 people in our department. And so I was heading towards this large department meeting, and there was a woman. She was an evaluator there at the college. And I said, oh, are you going to come with us to the meeting, to the large department meeting? Her words changed my life that day. She said to me, I'm not going to go to the meeting because I'm just an evaluator. No one cares about what I have to say. I'm just here to push paper. And from that moment, something inside of me stood up, allowing me to realize that I needed to be a leader in these spaces so that all people would see their value, regardless of the industry. How can I teach leaders to step into the role of empowering others, regardless of if they are the janitor there, if they are the administrator or director? How do I allow these individuals to see their value and to pull out the leader within them so that I will never again hear another person say, I'm just a person that pushes paper? And so from that moment until today, I have been on a life journey to do leadership education, not only in teaching it, but also in practice. And so that was my great pivot that led me to higher ed.
Wow. Wow. When you shared the story about your brother, it's as though someone hit me in my stomach and hit me in my heart.
Yes.
I feel for that you at that moment in time and the you now that leverage that moment in time to continue to stay focused, even though you pivoted in a way where you could add value. And then the fact that you were sufficiently open to hearing, which suggests a lot about your wiring, your predisposition, but open to hearing a colleague say, I don't matter. What's the point?
Yes.
And
Yes.
then use that. Wow. That speaks to the essence of you. And I am certain that's why Nima, even if he didn't know that particular story, but Nima encouraged me to have you on Lead Live. So I want to thank you, Nima Shimoli, for doing that. He is a technical strategist, organizational behaviorist, and he understands the power of individuals. And he saw in you what you basically have conveyed to the rest of us in those two stories. And so what did he see? He saw a leader who possessed substance. He saw someone who conveyed to the audience, to students, his students, the importance of internal integrity, which means having a clue your values and being in sync with those values in terms of your life trajectory. And then he also conveyed, I don't know if that I'm paraphrasing him very well because he speaks very well on his own, but the power that you have in helping people to think critically about whatever it is, a decision that they're thinking about making, the need to make a decision, the nature of how they're choosing to live their lives, all that's powerful. Yeah. Wow. Honor you. So, wow. Okay. My first question of you, and you've already answered this in part, and that is why leading in education is important to you.
Yes. Leading in education is important to me because it really is about shifting from those traditional organizational or leadership cultures and training people how to tap into their purpose and their passion. It's one thing to go to school and learn a trade. It's another thing to go to school and learn how to empower and train and help others so that they can step into their light. And
Well,
so,
let's stay there for a moment. That's
yes,
powerful. You just gave me chills. It's one thing to go to school in order to learn a trade, which is
yes,
powerful in and of itself.
yes.
Another thing to do, would you restate what you just stated?
Yeah, so imagine going to school to learn how to empower others so that they can step into their own
Mm,
light.
mm.
That is the gift that we
Ah,
have as leaders. I see this all the time when I'm thinking about what a real leader is. Real leaders don't walk around in arrogance because of their title. They walk around in humility because they understand the burden and the responsibility that they have to make a difference in the lives of those that they
mm,
lead. And so when we teach leadership education, we are helping individuals to tap into who they are as people, to lead with compassion. I love the servant leadership model that Robert Greenleaf talks about
yes,
because he
absolutely.
reminds us in servant leadership that it's not about being served, but actually serving others. And I think of John Mackey all the time, who is the CEO of Whole Foods, right? He
Yes,
is a servant leader that we have
yes.
all come to know over this last decade. But the beautiful thing about John
Mm,
Mackey's leadership is that he's actually educating us as leaders on how to move with a higher purpose, how to
mm,
think about a conscious culture and have conscious
mm,
leadership, and then to remember who our stakeholders really are. Leadership education is about teaching
mm,
people how to invest in every stakeholder, not just those who will be the recipients of your products or services, but the
mhm,
ones that you lead, They are also a part of that stakeholder population that as leaders we have an opportunity to invest in. And the things that we teach in educating leaders becomes a part of who they are that they will then go and give to others. And then we begin to see a complete cultural shift happening as it goes from one person to the next.
What did the young people say? Word? In this case, words empower others to step into their light.
Yes, yes,
Engineering leadership is about teaching people how to invest in every stakeholder.
yes.
Wow. Wow. And I love Hawa. She writes, "Hello, Dr. Webb and your guests. Privileged to be here and listening to you both. Thank you for your outstanding leadership." Well, it takes one to be able to see others, right? So thank you for your leadership, Hawa.
Yes.
And so let's keep going because I know there's more gems coming out of you. What is an example of an intervention that you can use or one can use to promote leadership among a team of professionals?
Yeah, I actually have two things. And the first thing is leadership education is not just about training people, it's also about what you're demonstrating. So, one of the ways that we teach leadership education as leaders is it's in the decisions that we make every day. And so, the first example I would give as to how we can begin to train people in leadership education is to pay attention to those vital behaviors that you're demonstrating to others. Because as leaders, everything that we do, everything that we say becomes a part of our educating others, and it's contributing to leadership education. So whether it's a decision that I'm making or the compassion that I'm showing to someone on my team, everything we do is leadership education. The second point I would make and use as an example, when I came into the Fung Institute, there were a set of directors, and then we had, of course, our support staff. And having the opportunity to step back and see how do we begin to make leaders within the organization. Leaders are not just those that hold the title. Leaders are also those that provide support to those directors, support to those students. And so one of the amazing things we've done over this last year is to incorporate these leadership teams at the Fung Institute. So what we have happening are folks that are doing marketing and communications now stepping into a position of leading a team that focuses on diversity and inclusion. Having someone who has a position of administrative assistant now stepping into the role of leadership and being responsible for our remote pedagogy leadership team. And so over these past 16 months, we have seen a transformation happening at the Institute where everyone sees themselves as a leader. And they're stepping into their God-given gifts and talents, no longer hiding behind titles, but exposing to everyone the beautiful gift that's inside of them. And we're seeing leadership happen like never before. And so I would dare say that one of the ways leadership innovation happens inside of organizations is when leaders step back and they say, how can I tap into the gift that you walk through those doors with?
Whoa, I had to roll up my sleeves because I wanted to see the chills on my arms. You're just so spot on. I'm not even going to try to paraphrase because you said it brilliantly. You don't need anyone to paraphrase. Yet I want to point out some nuggets among the many nuggets. And I'll do that after I give compliments to those who've typed in. Tomoko writes, wow, this is already so powerful. And of course, Hawa, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, writes powerful messages. John Wesley Baker Jr. is just clapping. He's like, let's keep it going, keep it going. We need to make leaders throughout the organization. I love this, Stephany. Love your passion.
Thank
Yes.
you.
And quite frankly, we in Lead Life, we firmly believe that everyone should be the CEO of their own lives, and that
Yes.
they take that into every space they're in, and that effective leadership that develops over time, and it's not
Yeah.
static. You've got to continue to grow it to be
Yes.
even more effective, and effective in the next moment, and the next moment, and successful the next moment, because none of
Yeah.
this stuff is static. When
That's right.
you are living it, you bring it to that environment, whether it's a learning environment, whether it's combination of learning and work environment, it's a combination of learning and family environment. You fill in the blank. All of a sudden, you create the genius. You
Yeah.
inspire the same. And before we know it, we have a C cultural change. And that's what you're
That's
talking about.
right.
You
Yeah.
said
And you know,
decisions, compassion,
yes.
recognizing what you do and how you do what you do. Go for it. Go for it. Let me not talk too much. Go.
No, no, no. You've said it. But, you know, if you really want to see the level of impact that you've had as a leader, pick up the phone and call someone that you supervised a couple years ago, 5, 10 years ago, because then you really get to see the impact that you had on them as a leader. I'm constantly telling my directors at the Fung Institute that everything that they do is an investment in the lives of those folks that they're leading. So there should be some characteristics of that leader that they take away with them, no matter where they go, that will always be a part of their future success. What we do now as leaders will have an impact on the people that will lead others tomorrow. And we have to take this very seriously because it is a gift. Being a leader is a gift. It is a gift that you get to give others in the way that you care for them, the way that you develop them, the way that you invest in their professional development as they're working and striving to meet the missions of the organization. As a leader, what are you doing to help drive that person into becoming their best?
I want you to speak to the power of the leader not being responsible
Yeah,
for one and what they choose to think about, what they choose to be open to, et cetera, but being responsible for facilitating in
yeah,
that individual the openness to learning, to growing, to making a difference, to being increasingly even more effective, to impacting not only organization, but
yeah,
themselves, the team, and the society at large. But also, I want you to speak to really the power of the leader in influencing the level of health, mental,
yes.
psychological, emotional, physical health of
Yeah.
those that they're leading, whether they're leading as a colleague or they're leading as an individual who are supervising those individuals. Can you speak to that a bit?
Sure. You know, one of the things I was saying earlier, how everything that we do is leadership education. And during this pandemic, we saw so many individuals being stressed. You know, home became work, work became home, and childcare, and so many other things that were now taking place as a result of this pandemic. And so health and wellness and work-life balance, everything started to collide. And so one of the things that we put into practice at the Fung Institute was to institute these mental health Mondays. So once a month, on the third Monday of every month during the pandemic, we had these mental health Mondays where folks had a chance to put whatever they wanted on the calendar. They could do meetings, they could choose not to do a meeting, they could do a workshop. It was their day to do whatever they wanted to do. As a leader, you have to have awareness and foresight. You have to have a level of emotional intelligence that says to you, what can I do to support this person in being their best? And sometimes that means pivoting from what the plan might look like in order to accommodate what the need is at that moment. When I entered the Fung Institute in January of last year, I came in with a plan. I had a strategic vision that I wanted to implement. And then 30 days after being there, the pandemic happened. So I had to learn my team from a distance. And one of the things I learned leading in the middle of a crisis is that you cannot put the work before the people.
Mm.
As a leader, you have to know when to put your agenda on the back burner to
Mm.
make sure that the people that you are leading are okay, that they're safe, that they're healthy, that they know the resources available to them. At one point, at the beginning of the pandemic, I no longer cared about being the executive director. The only thing that was important to me was that every person on my team survived the situation that we were in and that we got through it together. So that if that meant putting my strategic plan on hold so that those that were a part of my team so that their workload could be decreased somewhat so that they would have time to work with their kids and do homework in the middle of the day, then that's what I was committed to do. A real leader is not afraid to step back. You have nothing to prove when you know you're a leader. If you're waiting for others to tell you that you're a leader, you
You're
will
not a
put
leader.
the work over the people.
You
But
got
when
it.
you walk through the doors, knowing that you're a leader already, you no longer let other people define who you are. You begin to define what a leader looks like by the way you treat the people you're leading.
Woo! I'm just highlighting some of the comments. I think it's Valone. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Valoni. Stephany, you're amazing and a great leader.
Thank you.
Yes. Emily writes, very inspirational. What a blessing to have leaders like Stephany. You got it. Well said, Stephany. Leadership is a gift. Put people first. I hope your young generation, our young generation, generations, I hope our young generations deeply listen to this live so that they can step into their real powers. Timing is everything. Great idea. I will use the Mental Health Monday at my company. Go for it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what this is about.
Yeah.
Leveraging what works and
Yes.
adopting what works,
Yeah.
adapting it to your organization as you need to. So
Yes.
let's go a little bit further.
Sure.
You talked about you embed in your conversation with me one-on-one, and you certainly have shared it here, and that is some of the basic principles of how adults learn.
Hmm.
And let's be clear, there's a lot of science around adult learning that when used effectively, all of a sudden we just open up the vista
Yeah.
for people's engagement. And so rather than kind of list some of the things that resonate with me, what resonates with you in terms of adult learning experiences and how to facilitate their engagement, one, their growth
Yeah.
it's part of that engagement and their overall success.
Yes, that's a great question. I think for adult learners, one of the things that I've definitely learned over time is that adults do not need to be told what to do. Adults need to be given an opportunity to do something. And that is the key in training people. It's three things. It's about growth, it's about development, and it's about impact. We train adults to grow, to develop themselves, and then to think about how what they're doing impacts others. When we can set a young person in a room, an adult in a room, and we present to them a problem, and we say to them, how would you solve this
Mhm.
problem based on what you currently know? And they begin to open up and they begin to feel the burden of what that issue may be, whether it's hunger, youth violence, foster children that are going through the system, regardless of what the subject matter is. Once you tap into a core value and a passion of an adult, and then you present them before that problem and give them an opportunity to find a solution, you have begun to develop that person and to help them grow so that the things that they will do will be impactful. And the key is that the moment they start providing you with ideas, and they say, well, what about this? Can we try this? That is an opportunity. The moment they provide you with an idea, the leader then gets to step in and say, how do I develop that idea? And that's when the training begins. I am a huge believer in coaching and mentoring. As leaders, we are coaching and mentoring adults every day so that they can become better. Just tap into that passion of the person on your team. And the moment you get that opportunity to launch their dream forward, take that opportunity because it will have impact like you cannot imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yes, as Hazel emphasized, growth, development, impact, love it. Yeah, and we benefit from remembering that adults want to learn.
Yeah.
We are adults. We want to learn. We want to know
Right.
what we don't know that will help us, right?
Exactly.
We want to understand why. We don't just want to blindly kind of move through things. We'll just do it because I said it. Well, you
Yes.
just answer why. It's not that big of a deal. And yes,
Exactly.
you're right. The degree to which we're responsible for solving something, all of a
Yeah.
sudden we are embedded in, we're reflecting on our own capabilities. And
That's
as I
right.
say to people, there used to be this notion of, I'm going to empower you. No, it's
Yeah.
nonsense.
Right.
No one empowers the other. The
That's right.
other empowers him or her or themselves, right?
Yeah. That's
And
right.
so, but what we do is we create the conditions, and
Yeah.
you brilliantly conveyed how to do it. Give
Yeah.
folks a problem that's relevant, that
Yeah.
they value, that's important to them, that's important to
Yeah.
the project they're working on, etc., and ask them to solve it.
Yeah.
And be open to all the questions. Can you give me this tool? I need this information or whatever so I can solve this. Or I
Yeah.
need to work with the team. Whatever. Create the conditions to
Yeah.
facilitate the engagement so that the person can leverage his or her own expertise. Otherwise, if you're not telling them what the problem is,
Yeah.
you're not telling them why it's important,
Yeah.
if you're not giving them the opportunity to solve it, then what's the point? Really?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we do at the Fung Institute for Engineering Leadership at UC Berkeley. We are giving these students an opportunity to look at the world's problems and solve them through innovation, technology, and collaboration. They're getting hands-on experience through these leadership courses that allow them to move our vision forward, which is to make inclusive technical leaders that can then go out and be successful in the world of engineering and other places. This is a powerful way. You know, when people say, where do I go to school? What should I do? There's so many amazing programs out there that focuses in on helping folks to tap in to the leader within them, doing introspective leadership and really looking at what are those values that I bring to the table? Who am I? What are my passions? And then channeling that in a way that helps both adult learners and even children. You know, it starts even very young.
Yes.
When you start
Yes.
incorporating a lot of these principles into
Yes.
your day-to-day interactions, you begin to build and enhance the confidence that folks have.
Yeah, and I am very fortunate, and you're probably fortunate. Many people viewing are fortunate in that whether we have kids ourselves, we have nieces, nephews, cousins, others, or we're around youth, or we're influencing youth, we get to see their brilliance.
Yeah.
And why not just automatically assume that they have the capacity to
Yes.
exceed our high expectations, let alone their own? Okay, and
Exactly.
theirs tend to be higher than ours. So let's
That's
not get in
right.
their way. Let's tell them why. Let's give
Yes.
them the tools. Let's get out of the way and let them create. That's the
Yeah.
power. And then they take that into adulthood and they end up, whether they're in our universities or our colleges, they're in our places of employment, they're
Yes.
in our communities, they're across the societies of this planet, and
Yes.
they're doing brilliant work because they have been encouraged. They've been
Yes.
supported in that regards, as opposed to being told more than they ever heard yes, or being told it's not time yet. I remember a guy I dated many years ago, back in the 80s, one of his nephews, brilliant mathematician, and he pursued science, and he was so brilliant he got into UC San Diego's PhD program before I think before he even finished his undergrad, because he's so brilliant. He wanted to learn finite math. They said, oh, it's not time, we have to wait until you're in a graduate school. It's like,
Um,
Does that make sense? If a child
Right.
at 10 wants to learn finite math, get out of the way, give them the tools, let them
Yeah,
do their thing. So
exactly.
that's what you're talking about. You're
Yeah.
talking about just assuming that we all can lead and
Yeah.
get rid of the barriers to leadership excellence by providing the conditions, the
Yeah.
preconditions to that success, right?
Yeah, and it's redefining what leadership is, because so often we see leaders as those that are at the top of the organization, but redefining what leadership is by showing each person that they are a leader, though they may be leading differently. That is the importance of educational leadership and leading in education. Is helping people to understand that no matter what their role is, they're leading something, they're driving something, they have the capacity to do something that impacts what this organization is doing every day.
Yes. And I'd like for you to speak a little bit about the gentleman who created the Institute for Engineering Leadership at UC Berkeley, Coleman Fung,
Yes.
because I think we need to give him props for ensuring that the conditions are set at that institution to
Yeah.
inspire people to exceed expectations that would otherwise uh, be lowered, right?
Right. Absolutely. You know, Coleman Fung is such an amazing individual. I remember the first time I sat down with him during the interview process, and he began to talk about his passion to bring educational opportunities around engineering into less developed communities. He has an amazing desire to see
Mm.
young children in Alabama and Mississippi and some of these southern states be given opportunities to be creative and find ways to tap into innovation in where they are, so that it begins to transform their environment. And so one of the things that I really enjoy in just speaking to Coleman is that he always keeps at the forefront of his mind, how can the work that I do change my community? How can it change the surrounding area in which where I live and work and play? And so when Coleman started the Fung Institute for Engineering Leadership, it was really about tapping into those skills that were necessary for engineers so that they could move into leadership positions. So a lot of times we see engineers that have the hard skills. They know how to do the coding and they know how to go about creating things with their hands, but they don't necessarily have the educational background in leadership. So they're not getting those skills in communications, and they're not taking finance skills or financial courses or marketing and communication classes. And so one of the beautiful things that the Fung Institute has done under Coleman's leadership has been to bring together both the technical side and the leadership side and marry them so that these engineers are getting the master's level of technological skills while also learning how to be leaders that can run large organizations. And, you know, the placement of our students when they graduate from our master's program or when they participate in our Fung Fellowship program for undergraduates, when we see them moving into these careers at Google and Facebook and some of these larger companies, they are bringing to the table not just the engineering skills, but the people skills that are necessary so that they can build diverse and inclusive teams that begin to work together and change the way that that organization has worked in the past. These are the types of leaders that the Fung Institute is creating every day through our program. And it all started with the vision of Coleman Fung.
Yeah, and it's powerful. This notion of, as is described, integrated knowledge, the power of it
Yes,
far exceeds the obvious. And when you
absolutely.
mentioned that he wants literally young people,
Yeah.
kids who are in communities that we hear reports on
Yeah.
annually from the Federal Department of Education saying that the lowest performing students in the country are in places like Alabama. He's
That's
like,
right.
he wants to arrest that. He
That's
wants to
right.
say, that's nonsense. And people tend to think, well, he's Asian. Why does he care about Black folks? Black folks, only Black folks care about Black folks. Where only white folks care about white folks. Well, when you really care about the nature of the human condition,
Yes.
all those external features are considered to be beautiful and not a detractor to ensuring that your efforts are inclusive. inclusive. And his efforts are fully inclusive. He recognized his connection to everyone on the planet. And definitely as I would say, and this is what I do say, I'm only as good as the least among us. So I have a lot of work to do.
We all do.
And alone, you and I are just a few of us can't do it. We've got to do it with the collective. And the degree to which we're all healthier, our minds are clear, are able to just experience the remarkable aspects of self. We get to experience in the other. We get to facilitate in the other. If we're not healthy, go ahead.
We really need to find ways to awaken this in our society. And, how do we get people to see that need to impact their communities? How do we help people awaken a passion inside of them that drives them to say, what can I do to help this young child that's coming to school every day and may not even have a meal when they get home because their parents have been laid off? Or, we've seen so many different dynamics happening in communities of color as a result of this pandemic. And so as leaders, how do we tap into those opportunities? There's a director on my team, Julie McShane, who every year she helps organize for the Fung Institute to participate in a gift giveaway to one of the local nonprofits in the East Bay. And so everyone on the team either contributes financially or they purchase gifts. And we wrap them, and then they're taken over to the Justice Center and given to families that we select to invest in. See, as organizations, when we start talking about working with a higher purpose, we are in the business of education, in the business of educational leadership. But as human beings, we have a responsibility to the people that are around us. And so whatever organization you're in, whatever industry you're in, we have to find opportunities to work within a higher purpose to give even more than we're receiving. I love how I'll mention John Mackey again with Whole Foods.
Yes.
They have all of these different programs in communities to help teach people about nutrition and how to eat healthier foods and change their lifestyles. They're in the business of selling groceries, but they develop all of these programs within the community to help develop people. And so we can figure out within our organizations how we can use the knowledge that we have to help build a generation of people that begin to operate from a place of care and concern rather than focusing on numbers and profits. Then in our time, we would have done our job to make a very prominent investment in the future.
You just said something and that gave me chills. Focus on care and concern. And not just profits. Clearly, businesses are in the business of not only generating significant revenue, but adding value. And when you look at mission statements, they tend to lead with the value statements embedded in the overarching vision and even mission statements. They don't lead with, we're going to earn, the vision says we're going to earn this amount of revenue. The mission says we're going to earn this amount of revenue. The values, no. They lead with this care and concern. So how do we operationalize that where it's just ubiquitous? Doesn't matter where we're at on the planet, we're experiencing that. People in villages, in small towns, and rural towns, and urban settings and suburban settings, I mean, across the board, in environments that I haven't even, deserts, etc. They are experiencing it because it's the nature of how we choose to be as a species of humans. We are altruistic by nature. And some people keep saying, oh, I think we were born in sin and we're just wired to harm other people and we have to have wars. All that is a mindset.
That's right.
And for people who have that mindset or those mindsets, they're 100% accurate because they're recreating those realities. for
That's
people
right.
who have another mindset, which is we're wired to be loving, we're wired to add value, we're wired to be altruistic, we're wired, then we're right.
Yeah.
And we get to create those realities. The
Yeah.
question is, what reality do we want to be ubiquitous?
Yeah.
And the degree to which we focus on the way intentionally in the way that you describe as one of maybe billions of possibilities,
Yeah.
then we get to shift the nature of
That's right.
reality. I want to come back to an area that I said that I would, and sometimes I forget. So my
Sure.
apologies to those of you in the future or in the past who've experienced me saying we're going to get back and we didn't get back. But here's the DEI, diversity,
Yeah.
equity, inclusion. It's
Yeah.
become a buzz term,
Yeah.
phrase, right? Oh, we're
Right.
all about diversity, equity, inclusion. And really prompted by that horrific video that I intentionally did not view because I could not allow my spirit to go there. But
Right.
I grieved and I still grieve for the loss of all the men and women, Black, Latino,
Yeah.
others, Native Americans, others, Asians, others, whites, poor whites, others, who are
Yeah.
experiencing the degradation of who they are that leads to their death.
Yes.
And it started with Mr. George Floyd last year, that
Yes.
televised that it just really shook up the entire world.
Yeah.
And my fear at the moment was this will be a moment in time, and next year, this time, will be so calm and we will just retreat to where we were before. So,
Yeah.
how do we operationalize equity, diversity, equity, inclusion, where it's not just a buzzword? It's
Yeah.
actually not just codified in value statements or
Yeah.
in mission vision statements of organization, not just kind of a side, a set of marginal dollars that are on the periphery of an organization's function, but that
Yeah.
literally is integrated within our organization. So we don't even have to think about it.
Right.
We see the diversity when we step up and we engage with that organization. We experience it when we are on the receiving end of products, services, etc. We hear it, we observe it as we look at various communities across the planet, but
Yeah.
definitely in the United States, that are seeking to make a change. Because in the US, we said we're about diversity, equity, inclusion
Yeah.
broadly. How do we manifest that? And that's a hard question. And how dare I ask that of you? But you give your humble response.
Yeah, it really starts with a conversation with everyone on the team coming together and having open dialogue about what diversity, equity, and inclusion means. And at Berkeley, we add the B on, which stands for belonging. So it's diversity, equity,
Mm,
inclusion, and belonging.
mm,
One of the things that we did at the Fung Institute was to provide all of the team members with an anonymous survey. And
mm,
so they were able to take this survey and talk about what the pulse of
mm,
diversity, equity, and inclusion were in the office, and to be open and honest about that, knowing that no one would see their responses. And so once that data was compiled, one of the directors on our team, she developed, we had a group of individuals, some directors, some staff members. It was a very diverse group of people that came together and reviewed those surveys. And then we had two different workshops where we invited an external facilitator to come in and help us walk through some of the feelings that folks had around DEIB. And then from there, this team developed specific diversity, equity, and inclusion commitments that
mm,
every person within the organization took part in. And so you can actually go to the Fung Institute website and to our About section and
mm,
see what our diversity, equity, and inclusion
mm,
commitments are. They are visible. Everyone is being held accountable to that. We talk about diversity in every aspect of what we do. And we have been intentional to make it a part of the conversation. It's also, we are also intentional in our recruitment practices. A
mm,
lot of times when we think about diversity, folks are thinking about color or gender and things like that. But diversity is so much more than that. It's about looking at the cultural experiences that people bring to the table. It's looking at their skill sets and figuring out ways how to develop teams that can then come together and be innovative in their practices or
Mhm.
in our admissions processes and things like that based on their own personal cultural background or experience. And so really beginning to define what diversity looks like for your organization, it starts with a simple conversation with your team and helping to bring people into a clear understanding of what diversity, equity, and inclusion means, not only to them, but then what does it mean to us as an organization?
Mhm.
And then once there's a level of understanding, jot down those commitments. What are your commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion? We sent it out in our newsletter to our students. We sent it out to our alumni community. We also sent it out to many of our campus partners. We wanted it to be more than just a conversation that was happening behind closed doors.
Internal. Mhm. Powerful, powerful. The essence of what you've been talking about and the examples you've given demonstrates what you've conveyed is important. You're leading by example.
Yes.
Yes, you're putting in place practices. You're obtaining insight from your team as to what may work and needs to work. That led, in this case, to a commitment that is not only visible, it is intentionally shared, that allows you to continue to be intentional working towards that commitment. And you've operationalized it, at least in terms of recruitment. So you're demonstrating that. And it makes me think about the powerful role of our, and I didn't plan to talk about this in advance, but the powerful role of and legacy of our sorority, Alpha Kappa
Yeah.
Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And I'll just be forthcoming. I've been in that organization since I was an undergrad, and yet I've not been active with a local group since I was an undergrad. Well, that's not correct, but not too long after that. And yet I live the basic principle. The mission is about promoting unity, friendship among college women, ensuring high scholastic and ethical standards, and studying to alleviate problems, not just local in the community, but society at large, that concerns girls and women in order to improve their social nature, their
Yeah.
stature, and maintain progressive interest in really growth. We call it
Yeah.
college life, whether it's formal or informal. And I want you to speak to that in a
Yeah.
second. The real bottom line is to be of service to all mankind.
Yes.
And you are such a brilliant example of that because that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I was so fortunate to have an amazing woman that was my mentor. Her name is Malika Young, and she is a part of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. She was the person that first introduced me to the sorority when I was in high school. And I would watch her. She would serve
Mhm,
people. I would see her bring students to her home. She would
mhm,
have these events happen in her classroom where she would do these soul food days and bring students of all ethnic backgrounds to her classroom, and they would share in different types of food. And I saw what service to all mankind looked like before
mhm,
I even knew exactly how to define what it was.
mhm,
And so, from following her example, she has always led with a heart of love and compassion for
mhm,
people. And so, I watched the way she would work with young people. And she just has this amazing gift to stir up
mhm,
something within you to
mhm,
make you believe you can do absolutely anything. And so I go back to what I said before, having a good mentor and a good coach is so important. And people ask me all the time, why did you join a sorority? I joined Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority because I wanted to be surrounded by women of greatness. I wanted to be
mhm,
surrounded by women that I saw making a difference in the community.
mhm,
There are many sororities out there. There are many fraternities out there, but Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated has been a blessing in my life because it has taught me how to be a leader. In
yeah.
the work that I do, in the people that I serve, and always remembering that what you do impacts the next generation. Now,
Yeah.
I am also a Christian, and as a Christian, I understand that all of my gifts and talents come from God. And I am thankful for the gifts that He has given me and the people that He's allowed me to cross paths with, because all of that has contributed to who I am today.
Awesome. Awesome. There's something that we honor here at Lead Live, and that is the importance of faith, of
Yes.
family, of finance, of fitness, and of fun.
Yes.
And you clearly conveyed so much of why we value you. But I'm certain that we only touched the tip of the iceberg today. So there's a last question I have before we transition and maybe perhaps even ask you to come back someday as part of a panel. And I hope you're open to that.
Sure.
But I'd like for you to speak to or summarize the power of what you mentioned when you said you added as a team, you added to DEI belonging. Why is belonging important?
Yes. So, we all have worked in environments, I'm sure, where we felt that we were a part of the inside group. And there have been times we've worked in environments where we felt like we were on the outside of the group, trying to make contributions. And while we may have been heard, we never felt like we were a part of the organization. And so the belonging piece really focuses in on how do we make everyone not only feel that they belong there, but to walk with the confidence of knowing that they belong there. There's a difference between feelings and knowing. And as we bring shine light to belonging, what comes to my mind is when you have a friend that is important to you, you take the time to see how that person's doing. You don't just call them and say, hey, I need you to work on this and do this for me. You actually take time to see how are you doing. A person feels that they belong when they know that you see them beyond the work or the things that they can give you. And so when they belong and they feel a part of the organization, they actually end up giving you more than what you're asking for, because there is a personal investment in the success of that firm or that organization. And so the belonging piece, especially in DEI, centers around what are you doing as a leader to make this person see their value in your organization, to the point that there are things you may ask them for, but they will go above and beyond what you're asking, because they see that the work that they're doing actually is impacting the organization in such a way that they too get to leave a lasting impression. And so that's where the belonging piece comes into play.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I am honored that Nima connected us.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to meet you. Look forward to developing a mutually rewarding relationship with you. And I have no doubt that Mr. Coleman Fung was brilliant in his thinking and bringing you on board to lead that important institute. And I wish you only the best as you engage your team to ensure all of you exceed even your highest expectations. Just so
Great.
honored to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a wonderful opportunity to speak with you.
Likewise, a pleasure. So as Jet places this remarkable professional into the back of the studio, I want to say thank you all for joining us, and we wish you only the best too. And hopefully you've gotten not just one gem, but many gems, and will be able to leverage it as you move forward to make a positive difference in not only your own life, hopefully, definitely your life, not only your family lives, the lives of others, because of the nature of how you live your life and how you influence those around you to live their lives. Much success. Continue to be well. Wado.